everyone out there in the world. This is Nancy Rebecca with Intuitive Mind, and in this video this week I'm going to be talking about the dark and the light of the spiritual realm. Why? Because we are expanding in our light, we're expanding in our consciousness, we're expanding in our intuitive, our psychic ability, our awareness. Many people are becoming much more sensitive to the spiritual world, being able to see the spiritual world, experience the spiritual world in ways they've never been able to before. And often we really love to connect with our ancestors and our guides and our angels and the ascended masters of Jesus and Mother Mary and Buddha and Ganesh and Shiva and you name it, Kuan Yin, the archangels, the different angelic realms, but we don't often talk about kind of the darker, kind of denser, hungry ghost realm. So hungry ghost is a real term that is taught about in Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, taught about in Hinduism, so you can, in the Asian culture, so you can really do a Google search to read lots of information about how they define and educate and share knowledge about the spiritual realm that kind of is hungry for human existence and kind of moves through our human world. In our Western culture, we don't talk about that much, and we most certainly don't learn about it. I most certainly didn't learn about it in nursing school, and yet, as I'm working as a psychic healer, I often find that people get really ill because they can have spirit attachments or a spirit that is bothering them or hanging around that isn't leaving them alone. And so then I can help kind of identify, communicate with that spirit and get it to kind of move back over to the other side. So I'm just talking a little bit about how you can kind of tell the difference, because there definitely are different levels of kind of behavior or senses of the way that they interact with the world. The darker spirits interact with the world differently than the spirits of that work in the light. They work very differently. So I'll try to give you a little insight as to how you can recognize the difference. So yes, spirits can of the darker, I kind of call it the darker world, but let's just say the heavier, denser world. That yes, there are spirits that can attach to people. There are spirits that can attach to items like chairs and jewelry and houses and land. And there are spirits that kind of hang out and can connect with people who might have addictions like drugs or alcohol, sex addiction, gambling, because those spirits that had those addictions in this world will and have the potential to be drawn to, like a magnet. Let's say, for example, that they like to drink alcohol. They're going to connect. They're going to hang out in bars where people do a lot of drinking, because if they can hang out in your aura and you're having a drink, then they can kind of get the alcohol through your aura. So yeah, that's a real thing for those of you who haven't ever heard of it before. But those darker spirits, or heavier, denser, or hungry ghost, however you want to kind of relate to them, they usually, I will find them in relationship to if an area has experienced drama, chaos, trauma, violence, any place where maybe car accidents have happened, anywhere where there's been a big kind of hit to the energy field, it can cause the energy field to experience, kind of get a tear in the fabric of the energy. And there is a veil between the spiritual world and the human world, and that veil keeps everybody in their right realms and their right dimensions, in their right worlds. But if there's an experience that causes a damage to the field, or there's a portal that opens, or maybe somebody's kind of playing with the energy between the worlds that can cause that to open up, then spirits that are supposed to be in another dimension can cross over and be in this dimension. But over and above that, the veil is thinning. I mean, the worlds between the spiritual world and the human world is getting thinner and thinner. And so we're able to experience more of the spiritual realm, and they are able to experience more of us as well. So there's this thing called psychokinesis, where you can hold an item, and if you just get really quiet, you can kind of tell the vibration and frequency of the item, maybe even the history of it. Maybe you can tell if it was owned by a man or a woman. Maybe you can kind of tell the personality of it. For me personally, I had purchased a drum in South Africa once, and I loved it. I bought it from a museum. It was from the Congo. It was almost 100 years old. I really bought it as an art piece. However, in this drum seemed to be a magnet for the dark realm. It seemed to attract darkness to it. So after a couple of years, I had to really question, what was this drum used for actually? And maybe it's not such a good thing that I have it. But I tried all my tricks of the trade, because I've been doing this a long time, and I golded it, and I blessed it, and I prayed over it, and I put crystals around it, and I smudged it, and I did everything, but it just didn't matter. There always seemed to be this kind of dark aura around it, and it didn't feel very good being in my house. After a couple of years, made the decision that I was going to need to burn it. And that was a hard decision to make, because A, I spent good money for it. B, it was a beautiful drum. But it was like, okay, I don't know if there's evil that's existing around this drum, but I need to, it just should not be in the hands of anybody else. I shouldn't gift it to anyone else. I shouldn't sell it to anyone else. So I did make the decision to burn it. I did have a little ceremony, and I put it on the fire. But I want to add something here about this, that 99% of the time, most things can be cleared easily. You know, like you clear crystals, you might put crystals under the moonlight. You can put items under the moonlight and ask the moonlight to cleanse the item. Salt water for some things, putting a little bit of salt and water kind of ionizes and can kind of dissipate and disintegrate any negative energy. Prayers, smudge, like there's lots of things, asking somebody to come in and bless the items, to clear the items. So again, most items can be cleared. Going into a secondhand store, you definitely want to clear the energy of the person who used to wear that item. So there's a lot around the spiritual world and the connection to items here in our physical world. But what is it about that's kind of different between the darker realms and the lighter realms? So I talk about the darker realms, the darker spirit, they just don't have any boundaries. I mean, we know humans, right, that don't have any boundaries, and then we know humans that have a lot of boundaries. We know humans that are going to say, you know, I'd like to get a glass of water. Is it all right if I go into your kitchen and help myself to a glass and some water? And you were like, yeah, fine. My house is your house. Do what you want. We have other people just walk in, go into your refrigerator and start making themselves a sandwich. You know, they don't even ask you. So it's the same in the spirit world. In the spirit world, you have some spirits that have no boundaries. They can be mischievous. They only think about themselves. They only care about themselves. They only want what they want. And they're going to get it, you know, no matter whatever they have to manipulate to get it. And so often these spirits will come in and say, I'm a spirit guide. I'm here to help you. Let me help you with that. Well, that's going to be your first clue that that spirit is not of the light. If you have a spirit that comes in that says it wants to help you with something, that means that spirit does not believe in your free will. It believes in their will, and in their will, they're going to help you because they feel like you need it. However, with the spirits that work with the light, they believe that you have free will, and they also know that you have a lot of strength and resilience and capacity to get through whatever challenges that life throws at you, no matter how painful it is. You'll have a lot of angels gathered around, but they are not going to intervene unless you ask them to. You have to invite them in. Often I've seen Jesus or Mary standing very nearby someone, and literally they will not move in closer or intervene unless you say, Jesus, please help, or Mary, or God, please help, or Buddha, or Kuan Yin, or they ask for Archangel Michael to come in and to protect you, and then suddenly, whoosh, Archangel Michael comes in with these big, enormous wings to just really clear out anything that is disturbing you. So again, that's the difference between the light, spirits that work in the light believe in your free will, and they believe in asking for permission. They believe in not intervening. Now, do they intervene? And people have said that an angel rescued me from a car accident. So I believe on some level you may have asked for help, but for the most part, they don't intervene. But in the darker realm, they're going to try to influence their will over your will. So these things are happening in the world right now, and it's getting much more active. And even for me trying to make this video, I just looked at the clock and I think, okay, I'm 11 minutes in, and I have made this 4 times. And the other 3 times my phone shut down, so I don't want to jinx this recording by saying that, but it was just like, wow. That's why I say that mischievous, that they're going to interfere because they don't want us to have this higher level of knowledge that we can call in the spirits of the light to come in and brighten our house. So when I find, but the other thing, what was I going to say about that? So they don't want you to have that knowledge that you are a strong, powerful being. Because why do the spirit world want to hang out with us? Because we are strong. We are resilient. We get to have a body. You don't get to incarnate here on earth into a body unless you are already a strong soul. If there's a spirit that's coming down to the earth, if they do not get to incarnate and be born into a body, it's because they haven't developed themselves spiritually enough yet. And so, yeah, there's a lot of spirits around, and I have been in the presence of spirits that literally have enough power to throw furniture, throw dishes across the room, really wreak a lot of havoc. But as much as they can, that bravado that comes up and that anger that comes up, they still do not have power over you. You have a lot more power than they do, and that's something that I've cultivated, that truth. But in the beginning, believe me, I was scared as well. But now I feel much more confident when I go in, and I do call in the angelic realm to go into those places with me. And so usually when I go into a place like that, it's because there has been some trauma. So there was a restaurant in our area that was really having a lot of trouble with spirits and throwing alcohol bottles at the staff and moving chairs and tumping chairs over when people were trying to have their meal. And so they literally were going to close down the restaurant because they just couldn't tolerate it anymore. But what we ended up discovering was underneath the restaurant was an old jail cell from the 1800s. And it had a doorway that was still open, and so a lot of people went down there to do drugs or maybe to sleep. But it was pretty trashed and it was pretty dark. So we were able to do a lot of healing in that area underneath and clear out the spirits and get it nice and cleaned up again. And then it helped the whole restaurant brighten up. And soon thereafter, the businesses around started painting and fixing their windows. Like the whole neighborhood got much brighter after we were able to clear out those mischievous spirits underneath the building. And so that happens when there's been old trauma, old pain, maybe old violence, maybe old addictions in a certain area. But there was another house that I worked on where there had been someone who had fallen off a ladder and had died. And in that corner of the house, anytime years later that someone went to walk down that sidewalk, they would slip and fall at that same spot every time. And so when I went to check it, it was from that initial fall where the man had lost his life because his head hit the sidewalk. It caused the fabric to tear there in the energy world. And so it required releasing that trauma, repairing the energy field there so that then when people walked by, nobody else would fall. And so let's think of battlefields, for example. Those are huge areas, high levels of spiritual activity, because it doesn't matter which side of the war that you were on. It caused a lot of death. There was violence, there was fighting, and it caused lots of rips in the spiritual energy field in those battlefields. And so now the spiritual realm can come through. So I know here in the United States, there are a lot of people that go to battlefields, a lot of healers that go to battlefields, specifically for the purpose of healing the battlefields and the torn energy fields. And if there are still spirits from the war that had died there, they can help them to cross over. Because if they can get the energy field, if the healer can get the energy field there settled out, it can settle out the energy in the whole world. That's why I kind of cringe when there's wars in different parts of the world like we have going on right now, that we're really kind of short-sighted as a human race, often not realizing that it's creating an enormous imbalance in the energy of the world when there's bombs and things that go off and death that happens, and it tears the vibrational frequency, the field, and then the spiritual realm just kind of comes from other dimensions, comes to earth, and really creates a lot of havoc. So anytime that you can, offer prayers to those areas and other parts of the world that are going through those wars and that violence that causes the spiritual disruption. So it is important that we kind of start to have these neutral conversations about the truth of this existence. Because in the olden days, there used to be practices around the world where we put crosses above the doorways. People would put salt all the way around the house to create this kind of ionized frequency so that the spirit world couldn't cross over into the house. People have buried crystals in their yard. I at least 2 or 3 times a week do healings around my own property just to keep the energy balanced, to keep the energy really nice and healthy. So there was something else that I was going to say. Oh, so there are cultures like in Indonesia. I loved, my daughter had gone there to visit, so she was sharing me with this story about how she was there this particular time, and for, I think it was 24 or 48 hours, they asked everybody to stay indoors. Nobody was allowed on the street. So get all your grocery shopping, all your shopping done, all your visiting done, go indoors, close all the shutters, close all the doors. The reason why is because you would have these priests that would come through the streets, go through the neighborhoods, go through the houses to clear out all the hungry ghosts or clear out all the mischievous spirits that cause havoc, maybe even evil spirits, but they would clear them all out to go back into the spiritual realm where they belong. And so they didn't want any humans out that could get messed with by the spirits. So once a year, is that not like mind-blowing that once a year they go through and they clean the energetics of the environment, not just the houses, not just the streets, not just the boats and the cars, but they clean the spiritual realm so that it's nice and bright and healthy again. So, I invite you to go look up at the old folklore, the old things that people used to do to keep their home in order. They would often have priests come in and say a blessing on the house, to do a healing on the house. But there's lots of really simple ways. One of the ways is just imagining that your house is grounded to the center of the earth. You can imagine like a tree with lots of roots, and then allowing the golden light of the divine to shower all the way through your house and your property, just to help with the intention to cleanse the property. I happen to live in a house that's 130 years old. And I can tell you that when we started restoring the house, there was a crazy amount of spiritual activity. And fortunately, I was able to kind of talk to the spiritual realm, negotiate with them, get them to kind of move on. But it could, we'd have people falling off ladders and all kinds of spiritual disruption. So here we are in this time of the veil is getting super thin. We happen to be in the month here of October 2021. So we will be heading towards Halloween, or Samhain, which is the Celtic tradition. But there are many traditions that celebrate that time of the thinning of the veil, and they do all their spiritual activities. So this whole month and the months to come, try to find ways that you can bless your house on a regular basis to keep it nice, balanced, healthy, and whole for you. And as long as you're eating well and you're sleeping well, and maybe you can meditate once in a while or go for a walk, clean the house. A dirty house collects thick, sticky energy in the corners, and it attracts thick, sticky spirits to those corners. So you want to try to keep your house as clean as possible as well. Wash those curtains. I think that's why they did spring cleaning once or twice a year, to just keep everything nice and bright. So the dark and the light realms, one has boundaries, one doesn't have boundaries. One believes in the power of your light to do anything that you want to in life, and the other world is always trying to find ways to get all up in your business and to interfere and influence their will over your will. But the bottom line is, you've got this covered. And so just to know which worlds, that the worlds exist, and if a spirit comes up and says, hey baby, can I give you some help with that? It's like, no, I've got my friends, I've got my angels that are going to help me with this. So, and then next time, if you see that there's been a car accident, if there's one of those little crosses by the side of the road, you can pretty much bet that the fabric of the energy field there has probably been damaged. So you could just offer a little blessing or prayer to help seal over any torn areas. All right, everyone, thanks so much for checking in. And oh my gosh, I'm so glad I got through this, even though I was having so many technical difficulties as I'm talking about the spiritual realm. So I'm going to get this uploaded and get this to you. If you like this video and like to hear more every week, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the little bell, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.